The hunters smashed through the Historical Society's windows at 3 p.m. on a Tuesday, killing her colleague before she could scream. Isolde Ravenna ran with a stolen manuscript hidden in her bag, an 800-year-old text about vampire magic that should have been myth. Within 24 hours of reaching the Vampire King's castle with a desperate deal, he discovered her blood could break his ancient curse. In 40 days, the overlooked researcher became Vampire Queen. This is how her sister learned, never betray the woman you underestimate. The basement of the Prague Historical Society smelled like old paper and secrets that had outlived their keepers. Isolde Ravenna had spent 6 hours cataloging 16th century tax records when her elbow caught the decorative molding on the archive vault's top shelf. The wood shifted. Something clicked deep in the stone wall. For a moment, she just stood there, hand frozen mid-reach, listening to silence that felt older than the building itself. Then she pulled. The panel swung open on hinges that shouldn't have existed. Inside the cavity, carved directly into stone, sat a single book wrapped in cloth that had once been white, but now looked like old bones. The leather cover was soft with age, unmarked, except for a symbol pressed into the center, a circle bisected by a vertical line with smaller circles orbiting like planets around a sun. She'd seen it before. In forbidden texts the society kept locked away. The Celestia seal, vampire magic. Her heartbeat filled her ears as she opened the cover. The first page was written in Latin, but the script bent at impossible angles, like it had been written by hands that didn't work quite like human ones. To break the covenant of blood and shadow, the bride must come willing, her veins unmarked by hate or hunger. Isolde, are you still down here? Vivian's voice drifted through the hallway like expensive perfume. Isolde's sister didn't wait for answers. She never did. The door swung open, and there she was, long dark hair catching the light skin that photographers called luminous, wearing a cashmere coat that cost more than Isolde made in a month. Jesus, it's freezing. Vivian picked her way between archive boxes on designer heels. How do you stand it? I barely notice. Isolde closed the manuscript carefully, sliding it behind her back. Something in her gut whispered, don't show her. Anyway, I have news. They want me for the Vogue Italia cover. Can you believe it? Vivian spun in a little circle and arms outstretched. You're always so supportive. The words should have sounded genuine, but all Isolde heard was the subtext, I'm special. What are you doing with your life? That's wonderful, Viv. Really? Vivian's phone buzzed. Her face lit up. They want a follow-up piece. I have to go. Love you. She was gone in a swirl of vanilla perfume, leaving Isolde alone with the manuscript pressed against her spine and the familiar ache of being loved but never quite seen. By midnight, Isolde had translated 17 pages. By 3 a.m., she understood why someone had hidden this book behind a false panel. The Celestia Covenant wasn't just vampire magic. It was the vampire magic, the original binding that created their species. A mortal woman had offered her blood to save a dying warrior, and reality had shifted. The first vampire was born, and with him, a curse. Immortality, yes, strength beyond measure. But also the hollow void where the soul used to be growing larger with every passing century, until the vampire became nothing but appetite wrapped in human skin. Only one thing could break it: the bride. A mortal woman whose bloodline carried the same genetic marker as the original covenant maker, who could offer her blood freely and restore what had been lost. The marker appeared in 1 out of every 10 million births. Isolde's phone buzzed. A news alert. Vampire hunters attack Prague District 7. 3 casualties. The photo showed police tape and shattered glass, and in the background, barely visible, a symbol spray-painted on brick. The Celestia seal. They were looking for something, and Isolde had just found it. The attack came the next day. Isolde was reorganizing medieval cartography when she heard glass explode. Not the tinkle of accident, the crash of violence, screaming, the fire alarm shrieking. She grabbed her messenger bag manuscript inside because, despite every logical instinct, something deeper had whispered mine, and ran for the emergency exit. Smoke filled the stairwell. Footsteps thundered above, too fast to be evacuation. Voices shouting in Czech that sounded wrong, vowels stretched too long. The lobby door burst open. Martin stumbled through, shirt-torn, blood streaming from his eye. Run, he gasped, grabbing her arm. They're asking about someone. A woman. Something came through the door behind him, moving too fast to be human. Martin made a sound that shouldn't have been possible. Then he was falling. Isolde ran, ground floor, emergency exit, alley smelling of garbage and rain. She ran until her lungs burned, until screaming faded, until she found herself pressed against a church wall, bells tolling 6 o'clock. Her hands shook as she pulled up the photo she'd taken of the manuscript's first page. To break the covenant of blood and shadow, the bride must come willing. She knew where to go. Chapter 3 had mentioned him by name, the longest living vampire in Central Europe. The sovereign who'd been searching for the bride for centuries, who ruled from a castle above Prague's old town. Theron Ashcroft. If the hunters wanted the manuscript badly enough to kill, then it was real. All of it. And if he'd been searching that long, he'd probably make a deal. Isolde pulled up the map on her phone and started walking. Prague Castle sat on its hill like a stone-crowned windows glowing gold in twilight. Isolde had visited the archives before, but never like this. After dark. Alone. With a theory that would get her committed if she said it out loud. The tourist entrance was locked. She circled until she found a narrow street dead-ending at a wall worn smooth with age and a door that shouldn't have been there. No sign, no visible lock, just dark wood and a knocker shaped like a raven's head. She raised her hand, hesitated. This was insane. The door opened. She'd barely touched the knocker, but it swung inward on silent hinges. Beyond was darkness so complete it felt physical. Hello? No response. But somewhere in that darkness a breathing. Isolde thought about Martin's scream, about hunters who killed for this manuscript, about Vivian who'd called that morning and hadn't asked a single question about Isolde's life. She stepped through. The darkness lasted 3 steps. Then flames bloomed along the walls, not electric, older, burning without heat, in sconces, carved like hands holding fire. They illuminated a corridor that stretched impossibly far, lined with portraits whose eyes tracked her movement. At the end stood a man, perfectly still, hands clasped behind his back, dressed in black that made him look carved from shadow. Tall enough she'd have to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. Sharp features like a Renaissance sculpture, hard angles in severe beauty, the kind of face that made you think of winter and marble and forever. His voice had the quality of deep water. You found it. Not a question. Isolde's hand went to her bag. Found what? The one text I've been searching for. He took a step forward. Flames flickered. I can smell it. Old magic. Older than this castle. Another step. Another. The Celestia manuscript. Every instinct screamed run, but she forced herself steady. She'd come here for a reason. I have a deal for you. That stopped him, his head tilted. You break into my home carrying stolen property, and you want to negotiate. I didn't break in. The door opened. Because I allowed it. Close enough now that she could see his eyes black with something moving in their depths like smoke under glass. You stood outside for 3 minutes and 47 seconds. I watched you try to talk yourself out of knocking. It was entertaining. Heat crawled up her neck. She refused to look away. Hunters are looking for this. She pulled the manuscript out. They attacked the Historical Society. Killed people. They'll keep killing. But you need what's in here. The bride. The way to break the hollow. His expression didn't change, but something in the air grew colder. And you think you can help? I'm a researcher. 6 languages, 4 dead. Photographic memory. 12 years decoding medieval texts. Her voice strengthened. I can translate this faster than anyone. And in exchange, you protect me from whoever's hunting it. Silence. He studied her with eyes that had watched empires fall. Then he smiled. Not warm, but real. What's your name? Isolde. Isolde Ravenna. Isolde. He tasted the syllables. I'm Theron Ashcroft. I accept your deal. On one condition. What? Prove you can read it. Now. He gestured. A door materialized in the wall, simply appeared like it had been waiting. Beyond was a library that stole her breath. Floor-to-ceiling shelves of dark wood. Thousands of books. A fireplace large enough to stand in. In the center, a table carved from a single piece of stone. Theron walked to it and waited. Isolde followed, set the manuscript down, opened to chapter 7 and started translating. The bride's blood carries the echo of the first covenant, written in sequences that mortal science calls dormant genes. She will know the old magic without being taught. She will hear the hollow song and answer with silence. And when her blood touches the cursed, the marks will fade like frost in sunlight. She read for 10 minutes, translating on sight. When she stopped, her throat was dry and her hands had stopped shaking. Theron hadn't moved, but something in his face had changed. You're not just a researcher, he said quietly. You're brilliant. The compliment hit harder than it should have. I'm just good at my job. No, you're exceptional at it. He reached across the table, not touching, but close enough she felt cold radiating from his skin. The last translator I hired took 6 months for chapter 1. You just sight read 7 with perfect comprehension. Do we have a deal? We have more than a deal, Isolde Ravenna. His smile was sharp. We have a partnership. Stay here. Help me decode the manuscript, and I'll make certain nothing harms you. He extended his hand. She looked at it, pale skin, long fingers perfectly still, in a way living things never managed, and thought about Martin, about the certainty that walking away meant death. Isolde took his hand. The moment their skin touched, something happened. Not pain, not pleasure, like touching a live wire current running through every nerve at once. The room spun. Her vision whited out. In that blank space, she saw a symbol, the Celestia seal burning gold against darkness, and beneath it, letters made of light, recognized, accepted, bound. When her vision cleared, she was on the floor. Theron knelt beside her, genuinely shocked for the first time. What was that? He didn't answer. Instead, he turned his left hand and pulled back his sleeve. His forearm was covered in marks carved directly into skin, black lines forming geometric patterns. As Isolde watched, the edges smoked. Lines lightened from black to gray to silver, fading. The curse marks, Oz, Theron said barely above a whisper. I've carried them for centuries. Nothing has ever weakened them. Not magic, not time, not the blood of 100 volunteers. He looked at her. Hope or fear? You're not just a researcher, Isolde. You're the Celestia bride. The room they gave her was larger than her apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. A fireplace. A bed designed for royalty. This is too much. Theron stood in the hallway. You'll be staying here. You need somewhere to sleep and work. The manuscript room is 2 doors down. I've had your belongings retrieved. You what? Your clothes and personal effects. They'll arrive within the hour. Like it was normal. The hunters know where you live. Going back would be suicide. She wanted to argue, but he was right. I need to call my sister. Something flickered across his face. Of course. Though don't mention where you are. The fewer who know, the safer. 3 missed calls from Vivian. The call connected on the second ring. Oh my God, Isolde. Are you okay? I saw the news. Please tell me you weren't there. I'm fine. I got out. I'm staying with a friend. What friend? Where? Just someone from work. A pause. Music in the background. Vivian was at a party. Okay, but call if you need anything. You're my sister. I know. Thanks, Viv. She ended the call. Theron watched with an unreadable expression. Your sister, the model. Vivian, yes. You don't look alike. No. Family can be complicated, he said quietly, even when they love us. Before Isolde could respond, a woman appeared, dark hair, ageless face, expensive suit, silver tray with teapot and antique cups. My lord, refreshment for your guest. Thank you, Seraphine. Theron took the tray. Isolde Ravenna, Lady Seraphine Nocturne. She manages household affairs. The woman's eyes assessed her, calculated. Welcome to Ashcroft Castle, Miss Ravenna. I hope your stay will be enlightening. A threat wrapped in courtesy. After Seraphine left, Isolde asked, how many vampires live here? 12 in the castle, perhaps 50 in the district. We keep numbers controlled, less attention. And your word is worth what exactly? That almost smile. More than you'd think, less than I'd like. He handed her tea. Rest. Tomorrow we start real work. I need you sharp. At the door, he paused. Why me? If the bride appears once in 10 million births, why now? His expression went distant. I've been asking that for centuries. Every time I thought I'd found someone, I was wrong. Every lead died. He met her eyes. Maybe the universe has timing. Or maybe you were always meant to be here. That's not scientific. No. He smiled, reaching his eyes this time. But after centuries, you learn not everything needs explaining. Sometimes you accept the gift and try to be worthy of it. He left. Isolde stood holding tea that cost more than her salary and tried to remember the last time someone had called her a gift. She couldn't. The next 7 days passed in a blur of translation and discovery. Isolde worked in the manuscript room, an entire library wing dedicated to vampire history. Theron was surprisingly good company, quiet when she needed focus, insightful when she got stuck, patient. They developed rhythm. She'd translate, he'd provide historical context. Sometimes he corrected her pronunciation. Sometimes she caught errors in his memory dates blurred by centuries. It was the most intellectually stimulating work she'd ever done. Also terrifying. The hollow wasn't just emptiness, it was literal void where soul used to be. Vampires lost pieces over time, emotions first, then memories, then identity, until only hunger remained, wearing a human face. On day 7, she found him after midnight in the library, staring at nothing. Can't sleep. I don't sleep, not really. We rest. No dreams, just darkness and waiting. She sat across from him. Fire crackled between them. The manuscript says the hollow gets worse. Eventually, even the oldest lose themselves. Yes. How much have you lost? Long silence. I don't remember my wife's face. I remember loving her. Remember losing her broke me. But when I try to picture her, his voice softened. Nothing, like a photograph left in sun. The outline remains, details gone. I'm sorry. I've had centuries to mourn. He closed his book. Tell me about your family. Not much to tell. Parents died when I was 16. Car accident. Just me and Vivian after. She was 12. I tried to keep us together, but she shrugged. She was the special one. Pretty. The one people noticed. I was background making sure bills got paid. That must have been lonely. It was what it was. She'd never talked about this. She didn't mean to overshadow me. She's just bright, like sun, and I'm not. Theron leaned forward, something fierce in his expression. You're solving a puzzle scholars failed at for centuries. You walked into a vampire's castle and demanded partnership. You're not a shadow. You're waiting for someone to look at you directly. The air felt electric. Isolde stood too quickly. I should work. Chapter 12 to finish. Of course, but as he passed, his hand brushed her arm. That current sparked through. They froze. Isolde, I need to tell you something. What? The bond, when we touched. It's not just recognition. He struggled for words. When a bride meets her vampire, they become linked, connected. You'll feel things from me, emotions, sometimes thoughts, and I'll feel yours. What? Why didn't you tell me sooner? I wasn't certain until yesterday. When you were reading, I felt your concentration, your excitement solving translations, your frustration with syntax. Almost apologetic. I should have warned you. That explained the moment she'd felt things not hers, ancient grief, curiosity crushing loneliness. Can we turn it off? Not unless we break the bond, which requires your death or mine. Perfect. Hysterical laugh. So I'm psychically linked to a vampire I met a week ago. I know it's not ideal. Not ideal. I can't call my sister without lying. My workplace destroyed, living with creatures that could kill me, and now we're sharing brain space. I understand you're upset. No, you don't. You've had centuries to get used to being different. I've had a week, and I'm trying, but this is too much. She was crying. Theron reached, then stopped, hands hovering. I'm sorry. And she felt a genuine regret through the bond, warm and aching, and entirely human despite coming from someone who hadn't been human in centuries. I know you are. I just need a minute. He left her surrounded by books in the weight of a bond she'd never asked for. Her phone buzzed. Vivian. Haven't heard from you. Getting worried. Call me. Isolde stared. Thought about her sister living a life of light and uncomplicated beauty. Thought about herself bound to a vampire by magic trying to break a curse older than civilizations. They'd never been more different. I'm fine, busy with work. We'll call soon. The lie tasted bitter. She returned to chapter 12. About the ritual, how the bride's blood had to be given freely, the vampire accepted without hunger, the bond forged in trust. Halfway through a dense passage, she felt it. Fear, not hers, Theron's. Cold sharp, so intense it nearly knocked her down. And underneath, pain. Isolde ran. She found him in his chambers, doubled over, hand pressed to chest. The curse marks glowed bright red, pulsing with labored breath. What's happening? Backlash. The curse fighting the bond, trying to reassert. What do I do? I know. Nothing. Wait it out. Not an option. She grabbed his arm. Pain flooded through the bond. She gasped, felt like burning from inside veins full of acid. She didn't let go. Isolde stopped. The manuscript said the bond shares burden, so share it. She pulled up his sleeve. Curse marks worse than before raised, spreading like infection. Without thinking, she pressed her palm over the worst. Light exploded. Not gentle gold, harsh white, blazing bright. She felt the curse fight back ancient magic, recognizing her blood as threat, reacting with violence. But she felt something else. The bond strengthening, growing roots pulling them together in ways that had nothing to do with magic and everything to do with choice. She chose to stay. to bear this with him. The curse couldn't fight that. When light faded, they were on the floor. Theron's breathing steadied. Marks faded to their previous state, still there, but quieter. You didn't have to. I know. You could have been hurt. So could you. Wonder in his eyes. Thank you. She helped him up, her hand still on his arm. The bond hummed between them. Calmer. Almost peaceful. We're in this together. Partners remember. Partners. His smile was genuine. They stood connected by magic and choice, and maybe the beginning of trust. This is what it feels like to be seen. Isolde thought. Not overshadowed, not compared, just seen. The attack came on day 10. Isolde was deep in chapter 15 when she heard the explosion. The castle shook. Stone trembled. Through the bond, Theron's fury and cold calculation. Stay there, his voice in her mind. First time he'd spoken through the bond intentionally. Lock the door. Don't come out until I connection cut. 3 seconds frozen. Then she grabbed the manuscript and ran. Hallways chaos. Vampires streaming past with inhuman speed. Somewhere smoke and something sharper. Chemical. She made the main hall before she saw them. Hunters. Dozen in black tactical gear, weapons glowing silver. Fighting Theron's vampires with trained coordination. And in the center, directing with hand signals, someone she recognized. Tall, dark hair pulled back. Expensive boots wrong for combat, but somehow working. Vivian. Their eyes met across the burning hall. Vivian's expression didn't change. Didn't show surprise or guilt. Just smiled. Raised her hand, pointed at Isolde. There, the researcher. Take her alive. 3 hunters broke from the fight, moving toward Isolde with mechanical precision, and Isolde understood. The phone calls, questions about where she was staying, texts asking if she was okay. Her sister had been feeding them information this entire time. Vivian had betrayed her. Hunters almost on her when Theron appeared, materialized between them, moving so fast he left after images. His hand caught the first hunter's throat. Second went down to a strike she didn't see. Third fired his weapon's silver bolt that should have hit Theron's chest. But Isolde threw herself forward. The bolt hit her instead. Pain, burning, everything white. Last thing she heard before darkness, Theron screaming her name. Isolde woke to darkness in the taste of copper. Not blood, older, like licking coins buried underground for centuries. When she tried to swallow, pain lanced through her chest, stealing breath. She tried to move, couldn't. Body heavy, unresponsive. Don't, Theron's voice. Close enough she felt breath against her temple. You took a silver bolt meant for me. Unconscious for 2 days. 2 days. She forced her eyes open. Carved stone ceiling. Unfamiliar. Not her room. Somewhere else. Where? My chambers. Monitoring the wound. His face appeared. She'd never seen him like this. Haggard. Dark circles under eyes that shouldn't need sleep. Hair disheveled like he'd been running hands through it for hours. The silver should have killed you, but it didn't. It reacted with the bond. He held up his left arm. Curse marks glowing faintly, pulsing with her heartbeat. She felt it through their connection, pain his and hers tangled, until she couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. The bond absorbed most impact. Redirected through me. We both nearly died. His fingers interlaced with hers. Careful precision. Don't ever do that again. You're welcome. Something that might have been a laugh if it hadn't sounded so broken. I'm serious. When you jumped, I felt. He stopped. Started over. I've never felt terror like that. The thought of losing you before we even didn't finish, didn't need to. She felt it anyway through the bond. Fear. Relief. Something underneath, dangerously close to affection. My sister, Isolde said. Words hurt worse than the wound. Vivian was with them. I know. She betrayed me. I know. His jaw tightened. We captured 3 hunters. They've been cooperative. Your sister's been working with them for weeks, feeding information about your research. The manuscript, everything. Room spun. Behind her eyelids, Vivian's face, that smile, the way she'd pointed like Isolde was nothing. Why? I don't know yet, but I'll find out. Hand tightened on hers. Rest. Heal. When you're strong, we handle this together. Together. She let darkness take her again. Recovery took 5 days. Day 1, sit up without passing out. Day 2, walk to window without Theron catching her. Day 3, the chest wound closed to angry red scar, throbbing with her pulse. Shouldn't have healed this fast, she said, staring in the mirror. Should be dead or hospitalized. Theron stood behind her, shadow at her shoulder. The bond is changing you. Not turning that requires intentional blood exchange, but altering. Your cells adapting, making you stronger, more resilient. So part vampire. No, something new, something the manuscript never anticipated. He met her eyes in reflection. How do you feel about that? She touched the scar, warm, alive. Ask me when I'm not processing that my sister tried to have me killed. Careful neutrality. We need to talk about that. The Vampire Council demanded a hearing. A hearing to determine if you're actually the Celestia bride or if this is coincidence. Magnus Corvus is leading opposition, arguing the bond is fake, that you're using forbidden magic to manipulate me. That's insane. That's politics. Hands on her shoulders. The hearing is tomorrow. You'll stand before council and prove you can decode the manuscript. Magnus will try to discredit you, make you look incompetent. If he succeeds, council could dissolve our partnership. What happens then? Fractional tightening. I lose my only chance in centuries. You lose my protection. Hunters find you within days. Unspoken. And I can't let that happen. Then I'll prove it, Isolde said, chin lifting. I've been translating since I was 16. I can handle bureaucratic vampires. He smiled, reaching his eyes. That's my bride. The possessive should have bothered her. It didn't. The council chamber was older than the castle carved into mountain, with walls weeping mineral deposits like frozen tears. 12 vampires on thrones grown from stone. At center, elevated above others, sat Magnus Corvus. Younger than Theron in appearance, maybe 30 when turned aristocratic features, pale eyes tracking Isolde like predator watching prey. His smile was all teeth. Lord Ashcroft, how kind to bring your researcher. Deliberate pause. Dismissive. Theron's hand found Isolde's back, steadying. Council members, I present Isolde Ravenna, bearer of the Celestia bloodline. My bonded bride. Murmurs rippled. Magnus leaned forward. Bold claim, proof beyond marks on your arm. The manuscript could be forged. Black market vampire artifacts are common. How do we know she hasn't convinced you of something convenient? Smile widened. After all, centuries alone. Perhaps you're simply desperate. Insult landed like a slap. Isolde felt Theron's fury through the bond. Before he could respond, she stepped forward. If you doubt me, test me. Magnus's eyebrows rose. Test you. Give me a passage, any passage. I'll translate on sight. If I can't dissolve the bond, I'll leave peacefully. She held his gaze. But when I succeed, you accept what I am. Silence. Council members exchanged glances. Finally, Magnus smiled. Very well. Bring the manuscript. A vampire Isolde didn't recognize, female silver hair, museum-worthy dress, approached with the leather-bound text. Set it on a pedestal between Isolde and council. Retreated. Magnus descended with 2 smooth movements. Chapter 9. Lineage markers. Translate. Isolde opened the book. Latin script swam, then settled. She took a breath. The bride's lineage can be traced through 3 signs. First, her blood will sing when near the cursed, a harmony audible only to those who listen with more than ears. Second, her touch will ease the hollow's ache, though not cure it entire. Third, her presence will make the cursed remember what it means to hope. She looked up. Magnus's expression hadn't changed. Anyone could memorize that, something more challenging. Chapter 16, Ritual Preparations. She flipped pages. This section was Carolingian period Latin dialect, letters bent at strange angles. But she'd studied exactly this obscure formatting for years. Before the covenant can be remade, the bride must fast 3 days, consuming only moonlight-blessed water. The vampire must abstain from all blood weakening to vulnerability. On the 3rd night, they meet in sacred space. She offers her wrist. He drinks until the bond blazes white. And in that moment, if both wills are true, the hollow retreats and the curse breaks. Her voice rang clear. When she finished, absolute silence. Magnus circled slowly. Impressive, but memorization proves nothing. Anyone with time, then something I haven't seen. Isolde flipped to chapter 23 near the end. Never translated this. Ask anything from this chapter. Magnus's eyes narrowed. He studied it. Then that sharp smile returned. The warning passage. 3rd paragraph. She read silently first, heart sinking. This wasn't how to complete the ritual. This was what could go wrong, but she'd committed. Beware the false bride who comes with ambition instead of love. Her blood will burn rather than soothe, her touch accelerate the hollow. The vampire who bonds with false intent will find himself unmade, scattered across centuries like ashes in wind. There is no return. There is no second chance. Words echoed. Every vampire stared. Magnus faced the council. You hear, false bride? Destruction. The manuscript itself warns against what Lord Ashcroft has done, bonding with the unknown human based on desperation. If she's wrong, if this is false, he won't just fail. He'll be destroyed entirely. The passage also describes authenticity tests, Isolde said steadily. Blood singing, touch easing pain, presence creating hope. Theron experienced all these, or believes he has because he wants to. Magnus faced her directly. Tell me, Miss Ravenna, what do you get from this protection wealth knowledge most humans never see? I get to help someone who's suffered for centuries. How noble. And it's coincidence that helping comes with luxury and supernatural security. Accusation hung in air. Heat climbed Isolde's neck. Before she could defend herself, Theron moved to her side. Enough. You've tested her linguistics. She's proven herself. This isn't about qualifications anymore. This is you undermining my authority. Magnus went cold. Your authority has been questionable since you claimed a human researcher as bonded bride after one conversation. Council has the right to question decisions affecting the entire vampire community. The council voted centuries ago to let me pursue the bride. That vote stands. For legitimate search, not binding yourself to the first woman who could read Latin. He gestured to assembled vampires. We've all seen what desperation does. If this bond is false and he's destroyed, it leaves a power vacuum, throwing this region into chaos. Agreement murmurs rippled. Isolde felt Theron's frustration through the bond. Fear, not of Magnus but of council actually voting against them. She stepped forward before thinking better. You want proof, watch. And before anyone could stop her, she pressed her palm against Theron's chest directly over where curse marks were heaviest. Light blazed, not harsh white from the silver bolt. Gold warm steady, flowing from her hand into him like water finding level. Curse marks on his arms lit up, visible through shirt black lines that began to smoke and fade, lightening to gray to silver. Theron gasped. Hand came up to cover hers, not pushing away, holding her there. The pain, it's gone. For the first time in centuries, the hollow is silent. Light pulsed once, faded. Isolde stepped back, swaying. Theron caught her automatically. They stood before council, connected, glowing faintly with residual magic. Living proof the bond was exactly what they'd claimed. Magnus stared, first time genuinely surprised. That's impossible. The curse doesn't respond to partial measures. It shouldn't fade until full ritual completes. Apparently, the bond disagrees with your understanding. Theron's arm tightened around Isolde. Are we done or need more proof? Silver-haired vampire stood from her throne. I move we accept Lady Ravenna as Celestia bride and allow Lord Ashcroft to proceed. Seconded. Magnus's jaw tightened. Very well, but I maintain reservations. And if anything goes wrong, I'll face consequences, Theron said. As always, council voted, 9 favor 3 opposed. Magnus was opposed. Leaving, Isolde felt his eyes on her back like a target. That night, Isolde couldn't sleep. She sat in manuscript room staring at chapter 23. Warning passage. False brides and destruction and no second chances. What if Magnus was right? You're spiraling. She jumped. Theron in doorway, dark sleep clothes, making him look almost human. Didn't hear you. I can be quiet when I want. He took the chair opposite. Talk to me. What if the bond is false? What if I'm not actually the bride and we're fooling ourselves because we want it true? Is that what you think? I don't know anymore. She rubbed her eyes. My sister betrayed me. My life's in ruins. I'm betting everything on a bond I don't fully understand. What if I'm just desperate? What if you're just lonely? Long silence. Can I show you something? He took her hand, always asking permission with actions, if not words, and led her through corridors she'd never explored. Upstairs, spiraling into the castle's highest tower, they emerged onto a balcony overlooking Prague. City spread below like scattered jewels, lights glittering against darkness. River curved through it all, silver in moonlight. I've stood here countless times, Theron said quietly, watching the city change. Buildings rise and fall, human lives flickering past like candles. And I've felt nothing, just the hollow getting deeper, until I couldn't remember why I wanted to keep existing. He turned to face her. Then you walked in with a stolen manuscript and a deal. And for the first time in centuries, I felt something besides hunger. Curiosity, interest, hope. His hand cupped her face thumb, brushing her cheekbone. You think this is desperation? Maybe it is. But it's also the first real thing I've experienced in centuries. She leaned into his touch without meaning to. I'm scared. I know. So am I. What about Vivian? Expression hardened. I've been tracking her. She's in contact with someone else. Someone orchestrating this from the beginning. He hesitated. I think Magnus is involved. The attack timing his challenge too coordinated to be coincidence. You think he's working with hunters? With someone who wants the manuscript, and they're using your sister to get it. Her phone buzzed, unknown number. We need to talk. Meet me at Old Town Square. Midnight. Come alone. V, she showed Theron, his jaw tightened. It's a trap. Probably, but she's still my sister. I have to try him. Isolde? I know it's dangerous. I know she betrayed me, but she's the only family I have left. She met his eyes. I need to hear why. Face to face, he looked like he wanted to argue. Then shoulders dropped. I'm coming with you, she said alone. And I said I'm coming. I'll stay back. Hidden. But I'm not letting you walk into this without backup. Fierce protectiveness in his voice made something warm bloom in her chest. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. This will probably go horribly wrong. He wasn't wrong. Old Town Square at midnight was a different world. Tourists gone. Shops closed. Astronomical clocks silent. Fog rolled from the river, turning cobblestone's slick streetlights into distant halos. Isolde stood center breath, forming small clouds, feeling exposed. Foolish. Theron was somewhere in shadows. Couldn't see him, but felt him through the bond, watchful, tense, ready. Footsteps echoed. Vivian emerged from fog wearing a coat that cost more than Isolde's wardrobe. Hair perfect despite weather. She stopped 10 feet away. They stared across the distance. You came, Vivian said. You asked, even though you tried to have me killed last week. I didn't. Vivian stopped. Started over. It wasn't supposed to go like that. They promised just take the manuscript. No one hurt. I was shot, Vivian, with silver. I nearly died. I didn't know they'd do that. I just needed the money. Isolde felt slapped. Money, you betrayed me for money. You don't understand. Modeling contract fell through. I have debts, real debts. When they approached offering to pay, if I gave information about your research, I thought it would be harmless. You were just cataloging old books. How was I supposed to know you'd find something real? So this is my fault. No, that's not. Vivian stepped forward. Isolde, I'm sorry, I really am. But I need your help. They want the manuscript. If I don't deliver, they're going to. Didn't finish. New figure stepped from fog behind her. Magnus Corvus. He moved with predator grace, coming to stand beside Vivian, hand on her shoulder. Possessive. Controlling. Miss Ravenna, how good of you to come. You. Rage flooded through Isolde. You've been manipulating my sister this entire time. Manipulating is such an ugly word. I prefer incentivizing. Cold smile. Your sister has been quite useful. All I had to do was offer what she wanted, money, status, promise of immortality, and she told me everything. Your research, your habits, your weaknesses. Vivian flinched, didn't pull away. Isolde barely recognized the woman standing there. Why are you doing this? Because Theron doesn't deserve the cure, Magnus said before Vivian could answer. He's weak, sentimental, ruled for centuries through politics and compromise, letting humans think they're equals. It's pathetic. And you'd do better. I know I would. With the Celestia Bride's power, I could break my own curse, become stronger than any vampire in history, then remake this world the way it should be. Vampires ruling openly, humans serving their proper purpose. You're insane. I'm ambitious, there's a difference. He tilted his head. Now give me the manuscript, walk away. I'll let you and your sister live. Isolde, please, Vivian said, tears in her eyes now. Just give him what he wants. I can't do this anymore. For a moment, Isolde almost felt sorry. Almost. No. Magnus went cold. I was hoping you'd say that. He moved faster than she could track. Closed distance in less than a heartbeat. Hand wrapped around her throat, lifting her off ground with casual, terrifying strength. The manuscript, Miss Ravenna, or I kill you here and take it from your corpse. Isolde couldn't breathe, couldn't speak. Black spots danced, but she felt Theron's rage through the bond like approaching storm. Magnus must have felt it too. He spun just as Theron materialized from shadows, moving with speed that made Magnus look slow. They collided with force that cracked cobblestones. Suddenly, Isolde was falling, gasping as the world tilted. Vivian caught her. Actually caught her steadying before she hit ground. "I'm sorry," Vivian whispered. "So sorry, I didn't know he'd get away from her." Theron stood over them. Isolde had never seen him like this. Eyes black edge to edge, fangs fully extended, curse marks glowing red like molten metal. He looked exactly what he was, predator that had existed for centuries and remembered how to kill. Magnus laughed, wiping blood from his mouth. "There it is, the monster underneath all that civility. I've been waiting to see this. You tried to kill her. You used her sister. I did what was necessary to take what should have been mine." Magnus's composure cracked. "I was there first, Theron. I found the prophecy before you did. But you had the power, position, resources. So I had to wait, plan. And when your wife got in the way," he stopped. "Too late." Theron went absolutely still. "What did you say?" Magnus's smile was vicious. "Your wife. The mortal you loved so much, her death drove you to search for cure for centuries. Did you never wonder how she got sick so suddenly? How plague took her, but no one else in the entire city? You're lying. I poisoned her, slowly, over months, made it look natural, because I knew it would break you, make you desperate enough to search for the Celestia bride. And when you finally found her," he gestured at Isolde, "all I had to do was take her from you." The sound Theron made wasn't human. He lunged. The fight was brutal and brief. Theron moved like violence, given form every strike powered by centuries of grief and rage, finding target. Magnus fought back, but he was outmatched, outclassed. In under a minute, Theron had him pinned against astronomical clock, hand around his throat. "You killed her. You killed her and let me think it was fate. Let me blame myself for centuries. And it worked perfectly," Magnus gasped. "You've been so focused on finding cure you never looked for who cursed you in the first place." Theron's hand tightened. Magnus's eyes went wide. "Wait, the manuscript, I have it." He pulled something from his coat. Not the original, a copy. Pages photocopied and bound. Isolde's heart stopped. She yanked open her bag, pulled out the manuscript she'd been protecting, and saw it. Watermarks. Faint. Almost invisible. But there. Modern printer watermarks, in text supposedly centuries old. "It's fake," she whispered. Theron heard. Their eyes met. "What?" "The manuscript. It's fake." She looked at Magnus. "You planted it. Everything. The hidden panel, perfect timing of me finding it. You wanted me to bring it to Theron. And, oh, bind him with false hope so you could destroy him." Magnus started laughing. "Clever girl. Yes, I planted it. Took 30 years, the forgery, false panel, making sure you specifically would be in that archive on that specific day." Manic laughter. "And you both fell for it perfectly. Desperate vampire and overlooked researcher thinking you'd found something real." Vivian made a small sound, horror and realization. "You said the manuscript was real, that I was helping you find a cure." "I lied, obviously." Cruel smile. "You were just useful, a way to track your sister, make sure the plan stayed on course. But the bond," Isolde gestured between herself and Theron, "the way curse marks faded, that was real. I felt it. Coincidence? Or perhaps you are a Celestia carrier after all. Bloodline is rare but not impossible. But without the real manuscript, you'll never know how to complete ritual. You'll just be human with rare genetics. Useless." Theron's grip loosened slightly, just enough Magnus could breathe. "Where's the real manuscript?" "Destroyed centuries ago. Church burned it during Inquisition. What you have is my masterpiece based on fragments and legends." Magnus met Isolde's eyes. "Every word you translated was my creation. Every passage you decoded was me feeding you exactly what you wanted to hear." The betrayal hit harder than the silver bolt. Isolde had spent weeks on that text, trusted it, believed in it. All lies. Theron to Magnus continued, "If you kill me now, you'll never know if there's truth in what I created. Maybe I included real passages. Maybe ritual would actually work. Are you willing to risk that?" Theron's hand trembled with effort of not snapping Magnus's neck. Then Vivian moved. She picked up broken cobblestone, the Isolde would wonder later where she'd found the courage, and brought it down on Magnus's skull with everything she had. Magnus's eyes rolled back. Theron dropped him. Vivian stood shaking, stone falling from her hands. "He used me," she said, voice tiny, broken. He said he'd make me beautiful forever. Never have to worry about aging or fading or being replaced. He promised. She looked at Isolde. I didn't know. I swear. I thought I was helping you. We'd both get what we wanted. You'd get your discovery, I'd get immortality, everything would be perfect. Isolde wanted to hate her, but all she felt was exhaustion. You still betrayed me, Viv. I know. Nearly got me killed. I know. Vivienne's face crumpled. I'm so sorry. Before Isolde could respond, Magnus stirred. Eyes opened. Madness in them now. If I can't have it, he said, blood running from his mouth, neither can you. He bit down on something. A capsule. Theron lunged. Too late. Whatever Magnus swallowed was already taking effect. Veins turned black. Kin began cracking like porcelain. Vampire blood, he gasped. Concentrated, enough to transform human instantly. But I'm already turned. He screamed. The transformation was horrific. Body twisted, bones breaking, reforming wrong, face elongated features, stretching into something neither human nor vampire. Kin turned gray, eyes sank into skull. Vivienne watched in horror. That's what he was gonna give me. Get back, Theron snapped, pushing both sisters behind him. But Magnus wasn't attacking. He was changing, becoming something monstrous. Feral, mind clearly gone, replaced by pure hunger. He lunged not at Theron but at Vivienne. She screamed. Isolde moved without thinking, throwing herself between them. Her hand came up. Somehow impossibly light blazed from her palm. Not gold, pure white, searing. It hit Magnus in the chest. He shrieked, stumbling back. Where light touched his flesh burned. Not with fire, something cleaner, purer. He collapsed, convulsing, then went still but breathing, broken but alive. Silence. Isolde stared at her hand, light faded, but she could still feel it humming under skin. Power that had nothing to do with manuscript and everything to do with something older, deeper. The bond, Theron said softly. It wasn't the manuscript that activated your bloodline. It was me. The connection we formed. He pulled a book from Magnus's coat, not the forged manuscript. A grimoire, old, real, bound in leather that looked tanned from something not quite animal. He had this the whole time. Real vampire magic, spells, rituals. He flipped pages. And here, the curse that created the hollow, the real one. Isolde looked over his shoulder. Text in language she didn't recognize, but somehow could read, could understand. The bond was translating. It says the curse can be broken, she read aloud, but not the way the fake manuscript described. It requires, she stopped. What? Theron asked. Sacrifice. The bride has to sacrifice something fundamental. Her memories, her humanity, herself. Words hung heavy. Vivienne cried quietly behind them, staring at what was left of Magnus. And Isolde held the grimoire that might contain the real cure, knowing using it would destroy everything she was. They bound Magnus in silver chains in the castle's deepest chamber, designed centuries ago for the most dangerous criminals. His transformation had stopped halfway, leaving him trapped between vampire and monster. Something broken. He shrieked in languages that predated human civilization. Isolde could hear him, sometimes even 3 floors up. We should end him, Seraphine said, standing in the doorway where Isolde had been studying Magnus's grimoire for 2 days. Keeping him alive is liability. Theron wants answers first. Isolde didn't look up. About who else was involved, whether more hunters are coming. And you, what do you want? The question made Isolde pause. She set down her pen, met the vampire duchess's eyes. I want to understand how much of what he told us was true. The curse, the ritual, whether any of this is real or if we're still chasing shadows. Seraphine moved into the room with fluid grace settling across from Isolde. She looked different than at the council hearing, softer somehow, though no less dangerous. I owe you an apology. I voted against accepting you as bride. I thought Theron was being foolish, desperate. And now I've watched you take a silver bolt for him, stand before council without flinching, blast Magnus with light from your own will, not some spell. Seraphina's smile was slight but genuine. Now I think the Celestia bloodline has been waiting for someone like you, someone who doesn't just carry power but knows how to use it. Before Isolde could respond, Vivienne appeared in the doorway. Her sister looked terrible, eyes red from crying, hair unwashed, borrowed clothes hanging loose on her frame. She'd been staying in the castle under guard, not quite prisoner, not exactly free. I'm sorry to interrupt, Vivienne said quietly. I wanted to see if you needed anything. Seraphine stood. I'll leave you two alone. She swept out, leaving Isolde and Vivian in awkward silence. You don't have to keep checking on me, Isolde said eventually. I know you feel guilty, but hovering won't fix what happened. I know. I just don't know what else to do. Vivian wrapped her arms around herself. I destroyed your life, nearly got you killed, and I can't even make excuses because I know exactly what I did and why. You wanted to be special. I wanted to matter. Vivian's voice cracked. My whole life I've been the pretty one, the one people look at, but you're the smart one, the one who accomplishes things. And I thought if I could just, she stopped. But it doesn't matter what I thought. I was wrong about everything. Isolde wanted to stay angry, but looking at her sister, really looking, all she saw was someone who'd made terrible choices from deep insecurity. Someone who'd been used and was now trying to figure out how to live with what she'd done. I can't forgive you yet, Isolde said. Maybe not for a long time, but I don't hate you either. Vivian nodded, tears spilling. That's more than I deserve. She left quietly. Isolde returned to the grimoire. The ritual described was nothing like the forged manuscript. No poetic passages about willing sacrifice or blood singing. This was clinical, precise, absolutely terrifying in requirements. To break the hollow, the Celestia bride had to offer not just blood, but her essential self. The grimoire called it the price of restoration, giving up what made her unique to fill the void where the vampire's soul had been. For someone whose value had always been her mind, her ability to translate and understand it was asking her to cut out her own heart and offer it willingly. She would forget everything she'd learned, every language mastered, every book read, left with nothing but base instinct and empty memory, a shell that breathed but didn't think. And Theron would be whole. Isolde read the passage 3 times to make sure, then started making plans. The Cathedral of St. Vitus rose from Prague's skyline like stone prayer, Gothic spires reaching toward heaven with 6th century ambition. Isolde had visited as tourist once, marveling at stained glass and embedded history. Now she stood in its shadow at midnight, holding a grimoire that would save or destroy the man she'd come to love, and wondered if this was what faith felt like. The bond had grown stronger over days. She could feel Theron constantly, his presence like second heartbeat, his emotions bleeding into hers, until sometimes she forgot where she ended and he began. He was in the castle, probably sensing her distress, wondering what she planned. She'd left him a letter. Felt cowardly. But if she told him in person, he'd stop her. And she couldn't let him stop her. Cathedral doors unlocked. Seraphine had arranged it, thinking Isolde wanted quiet space to think. She slipped inside. Massive doors closing behind with tomb-ceiling sound. Interior vast and empty, lit only by eternal candles. Moonlight filtered through stained glass painting floor in pools of color like spilled jewels. Isolde walked down center aisle, footsteps echoing until she reached the altar. This was the sacred space the grimoire required, consecrated ground, where veil between mortal and immortal grew thin. She opened the book, found the ritual passage, began to read. Words were in that ancient language she shouldn't understand, but did thanks to the bond. They felt heavy on her tongue, tasting of copper and sacrifice. As she spoke, candles flickered. Air grew cold, power gathered around her, old magic responding to older blood. Halfway through invocation, cathedral doors burst open. Theron stood silhouetted against night. Even from distance, she could see fury and fear warring in his expression. Stop! Voice echoed through a vast space, bouncing off stone that had heard countless prayers and confessions. He strode down the aisle like vengeance personified, bond between them crackling with his rage. I said stop, Isolde. Now. She closed the grimoire, unable to meet his eyes. You read my letter. I felt your intention through the bond before I saw the letter. You're planning to sacrifice yourself. Give up everything that makes you who you are just to cure a curse I've carried for centuries. He grabbed her shoulders. How dare you? It's the only way. It's not. Grip tightened. I've spent 2 days researching alternatives. The grimoire mentions other possibilities. Shared burdens, split costs. You don't have to do this alone. Theron, no, listen. He forced her to look at him. There were tears in his eyes, actual tears red as blood. I waited centuries to find you. Centuries of emptiness and hunting and hope that kept dying and rising like some sick cycle. And when I finally did find you, it wasn't because of prophecy or destiny or magical bloodlines. Hands moved to cup her face, thumbs brushing away tears she hadn't realized she was crying. It was because you walked into my home with a deal and backbone made of steel. Because you translated texts that make scholars weep. Because you stood in front of silver meant for me without hesitating. Because you're brilliant and brave and so fundamentally yourself that the thought of you losing you, is worse than another century in the hollow. But you're dying. The curse is getting worse. I can feel it through the bond. If I can stop that, not like this, not by destroying yourself. He pressed his forehead to hers. The grimoire talks about sacrifice, but also covenant, true partnership. What if we're both wrong? What if the answer isn't one person giving everything but two people sharing the cost? That's not what the ritual says. The ritual was written by vampires who'd forgotten what it meant to love someone more than power. He pulled back just enough to look at her. But we're different. The bond between us isn't one-sided, never has been. From the moment we touched, we've been in this together. He opened the grimoire, flipped pages. Here, blood covenant, an alternative ritual the text barely mentions because it's considered too dangerous, too intimate. Requires both parties to give something essential, not one sacrifice, but mutual transformation. Isolde read, heart clenched. It would bind us permanently, not just mentally, but physically. Soul deep, connected as long as we both lived. I know. You'd feel everything I feel. Pain, joy, fear, love. No privacy, no separation. I know. His smile was soft, vulnerable. And I want it anyway. If that makes me selfish, then I'm selfish. But I'd rather have you beside me for whatever time we have than watch you erase yourself for my sake. Isolde looked down at the grimoire, at ritual that would save them both but cost their independence. Then she looked at Theron at centuries of loneliness carved into features that still remembered how to hope. How do we start? Relief flooded through the bond so strongly it nearly buckled her knees. We need Seraphine. The ritual requires a witness, someone to anchor magic and ensure neither backs out halfway through. As if summoned, cathedral doors opened. But it wasn't Seraphine. A dozen figures poured in, moving with coordinated precision. Vampires Isolde didn't recognize, all wearing identical black, carrying weapons glowing with silver light. And leading them, somehow standing, despite transformation that should have left him mindless, was Magnus. He looked worse. Gray skin spread covering exposed flesh. Eyes sunken but aware, burning with intelligence and madness in equal measure. Did you think I wouldn't have contingencies? His voice was distorted. Layered harmonics, sounding like multiple people speaking at once. I've been planning this for 30 years. You believed I'd stake everything on single confrontation. Theron moved in front of Isolde, shielding. Your followers. You had others waiting. A dozen of my most loyal supporters. Vampires tired of your pacifist rule. Who want to return to old ways when our kind didn't hide and pretend to coexist? Magnus smiled, showing too many teeth. They've been waiting for my signal. The moment I transformed, they activated. What do you want, Magnus? Same thing I've always wanted. You dead. Bride's power for myself. New order rising from your failure. He gestured. Followers spread out surrounding altar. Cathedral is sealed. Warded against teleportation, reinforced against physical breach. No one can reach you. No one can help. Through bond, Isolde felt Theron calculating odds. They were outnumbered, outmaneuvered. If Magnus had truly warded Cathedral, they were trapped. I can kill them all, Theron said quietly, meant only for her. But not before they hurt you, not without risking your life. Isolde's hand found his. Then we finish the ritual. Now, while they're talking. Isolde, we do it now or lose everything. She squeezed. Trust me. Theron looked at her for one long moment, nodded. Together. They turned back to altar. Isolde opening grimoire to blood covenant passage while Theron's hand remained locked with hers. Magnus laughed. What are you doing? You can't possibly think completing ritual will save you. It's not about saving ourselves, Theron said. It's about choosing how we go forward. Isolde began to read. Words were different from sacrifice ritual. Warmer somehow, despite describing a process that would fundamentally alter both participants. She spoke clearly, voice gaining strength with each syllable. Let two who stand as equals offer their essence freely. Let blood soul recognize soul. Let the covenant be sealed, not in domination, but in balance. Magnus snarled and charged, but he'd underestimated how fast Theron could move when motivated by more than survival. Vampire King met him halfway. They collided with force that shattered stone floor. Isolde kept reading. What was taken shall be restored. What was broken shall be mended. Not through one sacrifice, but through shared burden, shared strength, shared existence. Magnus's followers rushed the altar. That's when Seraphine appeared. She materialized from shadows that shouldn't exist in candlelight, bringing 5 vampires Isolde recognized from council. They engaged Magnus's supporters with brutal efficiency, creating barrier between combatants and altar. "Keep reading," Seraphine shouted, parrying Silver Blade with bare hands. "We'll hold them." Isolde's voice shook but didn't stop. The bride offers her blood freely given. The cursed offers his essence freely shared. And in the space between new life forms, she pulled silver knife from altar placed there centuries ago for rituals like this and drew it across her palm. Blood welled, bright red against skin. Theron broke from Magnus long enough to do same. His blood darker, almost black in candlelight. They pressed bleeding hands together. Cathedral exploded with light, not harsh white, not destructive force. Gold and silver braided together, warm and cold at once, spreading from joined hands in waves washing over everything. Where it touched Magnus's followers, they froze, unable to move, caught in magic older than their collective existence. Where it touched Magnus, he screamed. Transformation reversed. Grayskin cracked, fell away like chrysalis, revealing vampire underneath, still Magnus but diminished, weakened, madness draining from eyes as forced change undid itself. And where it touched Isolde and Theron, it changed them. Isolde felt curse marks on Theron's arms like they were carved into her own skin. Felt the hollows ache, that vast emptiness where warmth should be. Felt centuries of loneliness crash into her awareness all at once. It should have destroyed her, but the bond held. Because at same time, Theron felt her humanity flood into him. Memories of childhood with sister who overshadowed. Death of parents too young. Years being invisible while brilliant. Quiet joy of solving impossible puzzles. Bone-deep certainty that she was worth more than the world told her. They shared it all. Pain and hope. Curse and cure. And in the space between, something new formed. Light intensified until Isolde had to close her eyes. She felt Theron's hand in hers. Solid. Real. Felt his heartbeat sync with her own, a heart that hadn't beaten in centuries, starting again, powered by blood that remembered what it meant to be alive. When light faded, they were still standing, but changed. Isolde looked at her free hand. Skin seemed to glow faintly. Lit from within. She could feel power humming under flesh not borrowed from Theron but her own. Celestia bloodline fully awakened. Integrated with her essential self instead of erasing it. Theron stared at his arms. Curse marks gone. Not faded, not hidden. Simply absent. Like they'd never existed. "The hollow," he said, wonder in voice. "It's silent. For the first time in centuries, I feel whole." Around them, Magnus's followers collapsed, unconscious or stunned. Seraphine and her vampires stood guard, weapons ready but not needed. Magnus himself knelt before altar, looking small, broken. "Impossible," he whispered. "Covenant ritual requires equal exchange. Bride and vampire. But you're not just vampire anymore. You're human again," Theron finished. He flexed his hand, staring like he'd never seen it. "Not fully. I can still feel strength. Speed. But my heart beats. I breathe without thinking." "I'm alive," Isolde said softly. "The curse didn't just break. It got rewritten. The bond made you something new." She looked down at herself, at skin glowing like moonlight, at power thrumming in veins. "And it made me something new too." Seraphine approached slowly, expression awed. "The covenant, true covenant, not vampire creating thrall, not human becoming vampire, but two equals becoming something neither could be alone." She knelt, graceful, deliberate. "My lord, my lady, Prague has its first sovereign queen." One by one other vampires knelt. Magnus watched from floor, nothing in his eyes now but defeat. "Kill me," he said quietly. "I've lost. I have nothing left. Just end it." Theron looked at him for a long moment. "No." "What? I'm not killing you. I'm going to do something worse." Theron's voice was calm, certain. "I'm going to let you live. Let you watch what we build from the ashes of your hatred. Let you see that the world you wanted vampires ruling through fear was never going to last. And let you spend eternity knowing your attempt to destroy us only made us stronger." He turned to Seraphine. "Take him to deep cells, silver bindings. He'll be tried by full council. And then exile, permanent. He can spend the rest of existence in the dark places he loves." Theron's hand found Isolde's again. "But he'll be alive. Every day he'll remember that mercy is stronger than revenge." Magnus was dragged away, too broken to protest. When Cathedral was empty except for Theron, Isolde, and Seraphine, the vampire duchess smiled. There's still your coronation. Covenant made you queen by magic, but court will want ceremony. Tradition. How long do we have? Isolde asked. 9 days is customary. Time to prepare. Let word spread. Seraphine's eyes gleamed. Time for the world to understand everything has changed. 9 days later, coronation took place in same cathedral where Covenant had sealed. But this time it was filled. Vampires from across Europe. Human dignitaries quietly informed that yes, vampires were real, and yes, they were forming new government. Scholars and historians invited to witness something unprecedented. Isolde stood before altar in gowns Seraphine had commissioned deep midnight blue, shifting to silver and light embroidered with symbols from Celestia texts. Hair swept up, held by circlet of obsidian and moonstone. She looked nothing like the overlooked researcher who'd spent days in archive basements. She looked like a queen. Theron stood beside her in formal black. Isolde could feel his nervousness through bond, even though his face showed nothing. This was as new for him as for her, ruling not through ancient rite, but through partnership. Ceremony was led by Seraphine, chosen by council to officiate. Her voice carried through cathedral as she recited old laws and new covenant. By blood and bond, by magic and choice, I present Lord Theron Ashcroft and Lady Isolde Ravenna. Not king and consort, not master and servant, but sovereign partners, equal in power and authority. She placed crown on Theron's head, simple silver unadorned. Then turned to Isolde and lifted second crown. This one different. Gold worked with silver, set with stones catching light and throwing it back in rainbow fractals. The Celestia crown, Seraphine said, forged for this moment, for the first human to rule vampire kind, not through conquest, but through covenant. Weight settled on Isolde's head, like destiny finding its proper place. Assembled vampires knelt. Humans bowed. And somewhere in back of cathedral, watched by guards and wards, Vivian stood with tears streaming down her face. Her sister had become everything she'd once wanted. But Isolde felt only faint sadness through what remained of their connection. The celebration lasted 3 days. On day 4, Isolde slipped away to the Historical Society. Building had been repaired, windows replaced, archives salvaged. But it felt different, smaller now that she'd seen the scope of what existed beyond human understanding. Professor Dvorak, her supervisor for 6 years, stared like she was a ghost. Miss Ravenna, we heard rumors. That I'd disappeared, I know. Isolde smiled. I'm sorry for concern. Things got complicated. Complicated. He looked at her properly. Expensive clothes, new confidence. I see. Your position is still available if you want it, though I suspect you found other employment. I have, but I wanted to thank you for the years here, for letting me work with texts most people never knew existed. She pulled an envelope from her bag, and to make donation. The Ravenna Foundation will fund historical preservation across Central Europe. I thought society should be first to benefit. He opened it, eyes widened. This is enough to fund us for a decade. Consider it investment in knowledge, making sure past isn't forgotten. She touched his hand briefly. And if you ever come across texts in unusual languages, anything that seems supernatural or impossible, I'd be grateful if you'd let me know. I've developed specialty in those. She left him speechless. Walking out of building that had been her whole world, it felt like saying goodbye to a version of herself she'd outgrown. 2 weeks after coronation, Isolde found Theron in the library. He was reading a novel, something modern and frivolous and entirely human. You're reading fiction, she said, surprised. I've spent centuries reading history and magic. Thought I'd try something different. He set the book aside, smiling. How was the society? Strange, good, sad. She settled beside him. I donated enough to keep them running for years. Felt right. It was. They sat in comfortable silence, bond humming between them like conversation conducted in frequencies below words. Finally, Theron spoke. I remember her face now, my wife, the one Magnus killed. Voice soft. Covenant didn't just break curse. It restored what I'd lost. Centuries of memories coming back all at once. How does it feel? Overwhelming. Wonderful. Painful. He reached for Isolde's hand, but also right. Like pieces I thought gone forever have been returned, and I have you to thank. We did it together. We did. Thumb traced circles on her palm. What happens now? Isolde thought about it, about the crown waiting in her chambers, about responsibilities of ruling a people she'd barely known existed 2 months ago, about futures stretching out before them, longer than any human lifespan, but not quite eternal. Now we figure out how to build something new, a world where humans and vampires actually coexist instead of just tolerating each other, where people like me get to be exactly as brilliant as they are. She smiled. And we do it together, as partners. Partners, Theron agreed. He leaned forward and kissed her. Through bond, Isolde felt what he felt, wonder and gratitude and love so deep it had no bottom. When they pulled apart, she noticed something. The manuscript on shelf behind Theron, the one Magnus had forged that they'd kept as reminder, was glowing faintly. Not with magic. Something else. She crossed to it, pulled it down carefully. Pages looked same at first, but when she tilted them toward light, new writing appeared, visible only at certain angles. In ink responding to her Celestia bloodline. Real text. Hidden underneath Magnus's forgery all along. Theron, she breathed. Look. He joined her, reading over her shoulder as hidden passages revealed themselves. Not complete manuscript, just fragments. Pieces of real Celestia text that had survived, preserved in the one place Magnus would never think to look, buried inside his own fake. And at very end, a passage that made Isolde's blood run cold. The covenant is but the first seal. 7 more remain hidden across centuries and continents. The bride who breaks the first will be marked, and those who hunt the Celestia bloodline will know her for what she is, the key to unlocking what should remain sealed forever. Theron's arm came around her waist. We don't have to chase this. We could leave it alone. Live our lives. Let someone else worry about ancient prophecies. Isolde looked at the text, at warning and promise, at 7 more seals waiting to be broken or protected or understood. She thought about the woman she'd been 2 months ago, small, invisible, safe in obscurity. Then she thought about the woman she'd become, queen, partner, key. You know we're not going to leave it alone, she said. Theron smiled. I know. I just thought I should offer the option. They stood together holding the manuscript that had started everything, reading about challenges yet to come. And through bond, Isolde felt what she'd been missing her entire life. Not just love, not just power, but purpose. They'd been overlooked and overshadowed, but not anymore. Now they were sovereign partners. Covenant bonded. And whatever came next, 7 seals or 7 centuries, they'd face it the way they'd faced everything else. Together. Vivian appeared in the library doorway. She looked different. Hair pulled back. Simple clothes, eyes clear for first time in months. I'm leaving tomorrow, she said quietly. Going to Paris, not for modeling. There's a program there, helping trafficking victims, people who were used like I was used. Isolde set down the manuscript. That's good, Viv. I know I can't undo what I did. Can't take back betraying you. Vivian's voice was steady. But I can try to make sure other people don't make my mistakes. Don't let themselves be used because they're desperate to matter. She took a breath. I watched you become everything I thought I wanted, but you earned it. You were brilliant and brave and true. I just wanted it handed to me. Tears in her eyes, but not falling. I can't ask you to forgive me. But I wanted to say I'm proud of you, and I'm sorry, and I love you. For a long moment, Isolde just looked at her sister. Then she crossed the room and pulled Vivian into a hug. I can't forgive you yet, she whispered. Maybe not for a long time, but you're still my sister, and I hope Paris helps you find what you're looking for. Vivian held her tight. Thank you. When she pulled away, she managed a watery smile. Be extraordinary, Isolde. I know you will. She left, and Isolde returned to Theron and the manuscript and the future waiting to be written. 3 months after the coronation, a young woman arrived at Prague Castle's gates, shivering despite her coat, clutching folder to chest like it contained universe secrets. Guards almost turned her away. Another scholar hoping for audience, another human with theories. But then she said the words that made them pause. I'm here to see the queen. I have information about the Celestia seals. They brought her to Isolde immediately. The woman, barely 20, nervous hands, brilliant eyes, spread research across library table. Charts, photographs, archaeological surveys from 3 continents. I didn't believe it at first, she said, words tumbling. But patterns match. 7 locations, 7 artifacts, all connected to same bloodline. She looked up at Isolde with worship in her expression. You're not just the first bride. You're the catalyst. Everything sleeping for 2,000 years is waking now. Because of you. Isolde felt Theron's presence through Bond before she heard him enter. He came to stand beside her, reading over her shoulder. "What are the locations?" he asked. Young woman pointed to her map. 7 red circles scattered across globe. Egypt, Mongolia, Peru, Scotland, Japan, Madagascar, and somewhere in Arctic we haven't pinpointed. She pulled out another document. But there's more. Each seal is guarded by things that make vampires look simple. Ancient things, dangerous things, things that will kill anyone who tries to access them without the right bloodline. Which means, which means you're the only one who can do this. The only one who can break the seals or protect the Yeshamim or whatever they need. Young woman's hands shook. Question is whether you're willing to try. Isolde looked at map. 7 impossible challenges, 7 journeys into unknown. She looked at Theron. Through Bond, she felt his thoughts mirror her own. This was bigger than Prague, bigger than vampire politics or human supernatural relations. This was about unlocking or protecting something fundamental about the world itself. They could walk away, rule their kingdom, live in peace, or they could step forward. Again, Isolde's hand found Theron's. "Tell us everything," she said to young woman. "Every detail you have about seals, about guardians, about what we're walking into." Scholar's face lit up. "You'll do it," Isolde smiled. Same smile that had faced vampire councils and ancient curses and sister's betrayal. Smile of woman who'd been overlooked her entire life and was done being invisible. "Someone once told me I was brilliant and brave and fundamentally myself. I think it's time I proved them right." She pulled young woman into chair. "Start from the beginning. Don't leave anything out." As Scholar began speaking, laying out impossible challenges and ancient mysteries, Isolde felt manuscript on shelf pulse with faint warmth. First seal was broken. 6 more remained. And somewhere in dark places of the world, things that had been sleeping for millennia stirred. They were coming. But so was she, the overlooked researcher, the Celestia bride, the sovereign queen, Isolde Ravenna. And this time when world underestimated her, it would learn what she'd always known. She was extraordinary. She'd just been waiting for someone to give her a reason to prove it.